and taking your own dream and making it reality, because that's really what ballet is about. I believe ballet should be as accessible to as many people as possible in South Africa and around the world, given to the next generation through an oral history, and we don't have that in South Africa. And so the journey is, how do we take this shared history and build something so new and so beautiful into the world of ballet in South Africa, and how do we connect that count? Because your mark that you gave when you saw that performer on stage, and that was your subjective liking or not, will keep ballet alive. But ballet will also be alive because you speak ballet, I speak ballet, Michaela speaks ballet, Torizo speaks ballet, Offense speaks ballet. And in South Africa, more black people need to speak ballet. More black ballerinas need to be found. More black ballet storytellers need to be found.
Hello dancer, welcome to my second episode of Free Dance Podcast. Today I'm beyond happy to introduce you a really believer of ballet. He is the director of Mzansi Ballet, CEO of the South Africa International Ballet Competition, and the leading training program with the township in the Cuban methodology. Please, let's welcome Dirk Badenhorst. Hello, how are you?
Hi there, thanks for having me. I'm great, thank you very much.
Good.
And congratulations on having this set up and taking your own dream and making it reality, because that's really what ballet is about. It is about creating a wonderful space and a wonderful platform to just make something beautiful and make it more and more accessible, which is why I love being here, because I believe ballet should be as accessible to as many people as possible in South Africa and around the world.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you for your support, and it's been always there for many, many, many years. And yes, I just wanted to do the podcast because I feel like we need a platform, like you say, where we can talk about ballet and discuss about what is happening around the world, and especially in South Africa. For me, it's more like educate, analyze, and debate with everybody. Because, like I say, when I was growing up in Cuba with ballet, we have all these old dancers, and we were looking up to my senior dancer, and we were on the theater all the time and trying to go to meet them. And I feel like here in South Africa, we have that, but it's not like very common to go to do that.
Yeah, if you go to the theater in Cuba, or you go to the theater in France, or you go to the theater in London, you see the generations of ballet dancers that come and that support, and that so much is given to the next generation through an oral history, and we don't have that in South Africa. And sadly, I think a lot of that had to do with the closure of the State Theatre in 2000, and then the re-establishment of a new company by a group of young people. And a lot of people didn't feel that we had paid our dues yet. And so for many years, I think there was a feeling that, who are we and why do we have the right to talk about these kind of things? And we were in many ways intimidated by the greatness of the South African dancers. And I think that whole sense of family and of support, particularly in Gauteng, I feel Cape Town is a little bit better off than us, had fallen at the wayside. And it's been really, really hard to try and bring back people to come and see and support. And it's like every grouping is sitting on their own space and not wanting to interact and share, which is the reason why I've decided for us to do the Ballet and Dance Expo, which will happen in July. It is really an attempt to achieve, number one, greater cohesiveness, greater working together, greater sharing, because there are so many experiences and challenges that we all share, but because we don't speak to one another, we don't really get into, how do you feel about it, Monier? What is it that makes you unhappy in a studio? And how do we stop that feeling from being perpetuated into the next class? Because we are so often working and teaching in the way that we were dealt with in previous generations. And that's not necessarily the only way. For some people that works, but for some people it won't work. And so the journey is, how do we take this shared history and build something so new and so beautiful into the world of ballet in South Africa? And how do we connect whatever we are doing in South Africa to the rest of the world? And how do we make what we are doing in South Africa relevant to the rest of the world, but without losing a true South African identity? And that's why, in 2008 was the first year I went to the National Ballet School of Cuba and completely fell in love with the whole system and the methodology, and was incredibly fortunate to have meetings with the now late Ramona de Sá and a dream meeting with Fernando Alonso. And immediately they just opened their doors and their hearts and said, we want to show our solidarity with you, with South Africa. You have access to everything. And that's literally what they have been doing. And I feel that is what I want us to bring back to South Africa. But one thing that I'm learning as I'm getting older is that we are all different. And we have different ways of doing things, and we have different needs at different times, and we have different likes at different times. So something that I like today, I might not like in 10 years' time, and that's okay. But it is creating a space. Yesterday I was at an event that was hosted by the German embassy and the Mexican embassy around gender equality and gender neutrality and intergenderedness and intersexuality. And for me, one of the most important things is that we don't create constant aggression, but that we rather find ways of saying, no, when I talk to you, how do I just inform you? And the very next person has a very different attitude, and then say, but how do I get my same message across to that person without aggravating them? Because that's what happens. So when I aggravate you, you walk away and go back on me. No, that's not how we're going to build a bigger audience. That's not how we're going to win over the government in South Africa and potential funders and potential new dancers. How do we get the parents that we are wanting to have their kids train with us in our schools and the many different schools? How do we get them all to go, I'm not, by favoring the Cuban methodology, I'm not in any way saying I'm not in favor of the training of the Russians or the French or the Royal Academy of Dance or the DASA or the Cecchetti. No, it's just saying, right now for me, this is what I feel I want to see more of. But I understand that, like with banks, you have Absa Bank, Standard Bank, Nedbank, all of the banks, and they're constantly in competition with one another. But they have like banking councils that oversee them, that take care of each other. And I think that is what I'm trying to achieve back to the Ballet and Dance Expo. That sense of cohesiveness, that sense of working together, that sense of saying, I'm not wanting to tell you what to do. Who am I to want to tell you in any case what to do? Even with your podcast. It's your podcast. You can do in your podcast what you want, have interviews with whoever you want. And that's really what I want to have happen. I want us to be able to say, open the conversation.
Let's be free,
Be free podcast, free dance, free everything. Absolutely, because I'm hoping that by having Mzansi Ballet, having the school, having the competition, going around the world, the more knowledge we can gain, the freer we become.
100%.
Because then we have information to start having proper conversations with the other people. But if you only have been given one thing and you believe that's the alpha and the omega of everything, then you have no freedom to explore.
And that's happened, sorry to cut to you, and that happened with George the other day when I was talking about the competition. He told me your competition when he went there, and he just talked like, he was like preparing for 1 year, then he went to the competition. And I said, no, in Cuba we prepared the competition for like 7 months. but we only focus in that competition. Once you go out international, you believe that you are the best because you've been preparing. You don't see nothing else. But when we got into the South Africa international competition, my next question is going to be, we were like, oh, no, we are not the only one. There is more people around the world that dance better than you. So how you train, how can you get better without being like, okay, scared of doing whatever you want, you know?
But what is better dance in any case? So we see that with singing. You have some very popular singers and you think they are trashy, and yet they have the biggest audiences.
Yes.
And then you have these so-called purists that only believe in the perfection, and they have no followers. And you have to understand that if your funding comes from a national source, you need to also think that you are creating art for the people.
Yes.
And so the question around what is good will change from country to city to town to teacher. Yes. Even if you think of your own school in Cuba. And I think that is for me something that I have learned over the years with all the very big schools, is that there are 10 or 15 or 20 incredible teachers. They don't all agree, but they are all moving towards the same goal. And that goal is to create dancers that will be employed by the time they finish their training.
Yes.
And so even with the competition, I always, of the South African International Ballet Competition in particular, I always say to the jury, their true vote is the number they write on the piece of paper, because you can't change that. Once you start having a conversation and you have 7 jury members around one table and one person has an incredibly strong personality, he or she will just overpower the other people. And that's why I say, yeah, you can talk and you can say whatever you want, but in the end, it's your mark that counts, because your mark that you gave when you saw that performer on stage. And that was your subjective liking or not liking of that person. And that's another thing. Ballet and dance is so subjective. This one likes good feet, that one likes good legs, that one likes turns, that one likes jumps, that one likes artistry. We all always talk about artistry.
Yes.
Excuse me. And that is what differentiates us from the other art, sports, gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, other things. But in the end, if you are able to tell a wonderful story and have high legs, or wonderful story and have a high jump, isn't that more exciting?
Yes.
And I think that's what I've always loved about the Cuban methodology, is that your storytelling has been so powerful, but your bravura and your sometimes even roughness in the dance really appeals to a less refined audience. And in South Africa, we have such a hard battle, because we have a small group of people that have had ballet for 100 years in South Africa. But we have a much larger population that have had ballet for the last 5 or 10 years. Some of them not at all.
Yes.
And I think that is the challenge, is that you need to be able to stage Swan Lake, but also the Gold Rhino, but also Amapiano, but also Tchaikovsky in a different version, or Wouter Kellerman in a different version. And it needs to be open to say, who am I creating it for? But then that takes me back to the whole conversation about what's good and what's not good. And you and I have sat in front of a class, in front of a studio, and said, oh, you like this one? I was like, I don't like that one. But that's only my opinion.
Yes.
I mean, as a director, I've sat so many times in an interview with a dancer and said, darling, I'm letting you go. But that's only because I don't think this is your place. It's not the feeling that you have. Yeah. It doesn't mean you're not going to be able to walk out of here and get a job the very next minute.
And you know, when that thing happens to me, like when I was living in Spain, because I wanted to audition to some company, and then I got rejected like many times in Spain. I was like, but what is the reason? And then it's just like the company have different type of dance and what they need. And doesn't mean that I'm not good enough to be in that company. Right now, I can't be there. So it's good that you say that, because sometimes dancers we feel like, no, he doesn't like me, so then I won't go there anymore. And doesn't mean that. It's just like Right now, you don't fit into the company.
A question we are often asked is, how does height impact on the career of a dancer? And you would have a short dancer that cannot find work, and then suddenly they knock on the door of a company who's at that moment staging Swan Lake and they need a jester.
Yes.
Open the door
It's
and you are in.
100%.
And so that is something I want young dancers and parents to understand. Train the passionate dancer to the best of your ability. Create the opportunities. Grow and develop them. Give them the skill to be entrepreneurial. Give them the love. Don't kill that. Because there will be a job for them somewhere. Whether they have to create their own job doesn't matter, but there will be a job. And the job can be as a dancer, as a stage person, it could be a choreographer, it could be a lighting designer, set designer, a person that truly enjoys the ballet, but now has a better understanding of what it took. But ultimately, we all want to dance first.
Yes.
So let's try and create that. That's why we have the junior company, so that we can create these things. And I love the more junior companies and junior shows there are in South Africa, in Johannesburg, the better for all of us.
Yes.
Because each one of these groups reach a new and different market. And the more people we can train and the more people we can expose to ballet, the bigger our audience will become.
Yes.
And that's why the basic economies of scale play into this whole process of making sure we train more, show more, and then you can also choose better.
Yes.
Because if you have 1,000 kids to choose from, you can then become much more selective in who you choose for your production.
Yes.
But again, I have a different taste from the people from Joburg Ballet, from the people from W Groove, from Josie Dance Company. There are all of these dance companies, wonderful companies doing their own things, creating their own works. But for Mzansi, I have a particular thing that I like. And that's what I love about being an independent company at the moment, is that we can literally stage what we want.
Yes.
And we are not driven by a board that says you have to do this. Or I work on intuition a lot. I believe so strongly in the concept of intuition. And if you sit with a board and they want to see the finances and they want to see your business plan and they want to see the steps you're going to achieve that, all very good, incredibly good and wonderful to have. But if I'm not in the initial phase attracted by the concept, it's not going to happen.
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
Your podcast is a perfect example. If I say to you, do something that you don't want to do, you wouldn't have gotten to this point.
Yes.
But if you want to do it, you're going to make it happen. For the Gold Run of Mapungubwe, I needed to raise 5 million rand. Over 3 or 4 years, that's what it took. But because it was a passion project and it's not finished and it's now starting to get wings outside of South Africa, it also reiterates, number 1, my passion, 2, choreographer's passion, 3, designer, composer, lighting designer passion, dancer's passion. But it also shows that we can never give up. Because we didn't have great audiences always, but I know the product is a good product. And sometimes we are very fortunate that we have supporters that say, I agree with you, I will help fund that project, I will help buy tickets. And that's what we need to do. But we have to believe in it. If we don't believe in it, you're not going to get somebody to believe in it. And that's the same for dancers.
Yeah, and that was one of the questions that I have, because I know you for many years now. Yeah, many years.
What year did you start at the ballet school in Cuba? Were you already at the school in 2008 when I went the first time?
That was the first time that I met you.
I still remember.
That was my first year in that school. Yeah. So my next question would be what motivates you to fight constantly? To fight for ballet in South Africa? Because knowing that there is no many people that support you, but there's still you fight. How is that possible?
Because number one is my passion. Number two, I believe ballet means so many different things to different people in our country. So politically, if we think of the fact that pre-1994, ballet wasn't really for black people. Black people didn't really have access to it. And when the change of government came, white people fearfully thought that they would not have ballet 5 years down the line.
Oh, really?
Because in 2000, as a matter of fact, the government actually did close the State Theatre. But they didn't close ballet. They closed the building. And so right now, in 2024, we still have ballet, but it's accessible to any South African that wants to do ballet. And I think that is my one message. My second message, and very important, is that diplomatically, ballet has an incredible role to play. At one of the performances of the Gold Rhino, I walked on stage and said, up to now, ballet spoke French, it spoke Russian, it spoke Italian. But right now, finally, we can say that classical ballet speaks African. And that, for me, is such a powerful tool when we speak to our colleagues in the rest of Africa, in the rest of the world, because we can say, I see your Swan Lake, but you need to see my Gold Rhino, or whatever the ballet is that's being created. And now there's more and more young South Africans creating beautiful ballets, particularly classical and neoclassical. I'm not talking about contemporary, I'm talking about neoclassical and classical ballet. And I think that is what needs to happen. But also, ballet is about creating dreams. And the most incredible thing is that a girl on point with a tiara and a tutu has the same inspirational and aspirational value, whether you are in Soweto, whether you are in Beijing, Havana, anywhere in the world. For some reason, every little girl wants to do it. And some boys, of course.
Yes.
And so that is why I keep on doing what I'm doing. And then we are wonderfully blessed that we have the Carolyn Staines, Mary Oppenheimers, sometimes the National Lottery Commission in South Africa, wonderful friends of the ballet, just people that love ballet and want to keep ballet alive. That when we are feeling down, and you've had that, you've had Erika Lombard in your life, that days you felt like, what's the point of all of this?
Yes.
And you can pick up the phone and say, hey, my mom is not here. She sits in Cuba. Can we go for coffee? Michelle Dames, another fantastic person that has just Louise Hodges. Mrs. Mbeki, who loves the ballet. So there are people like that I find is incredible. But then we also have people like Christoph Bohm in Berlin and Oliver Matz in Zurich, and some of the jury members that we've brought to South Africa, Vieng Sai Valdez, the current director of the National Ballet of Cuba, that have always said, we want to help you in South Africa. And it's now not only in South Africa, it's the whole of Africa. There are incredible schools. There's Daniel, there's Tsalu, there is a whole bunch of people teaching in the rest of Africa. And so that's what's keeping me going. And I think if we can all find that thing that keeps us going, despite hardships, despite bumping your head all the time, that's worth it. And then seeing a beautiful ballet. Seeing you on stage doing your turns and your jumps. And that is incredible. When you sit in the competition and you stand backstage and you see all these kids from around the world just connecting with one another and understanding that the ballet is one small part of the experience. It's the networks. It's the interconnectedness of ballet around the world. That's what makes it amazing.
And now that you talk again about the competition, you started the competition in 2008, right? And what do you think is the South African international competition give to the new generation?
So I was at the YAGP in 2007, and I'm still very good friends with Larissa Saveliev, who runs that, and many other competitions, but particularly there. And if you see the American dancer in 2007, and you see the American dancer in 2024, and you look at the South African dancer in 2008, and you look at some of the South African dancers in 2024, then you see the impact of the competition. At first, the dancers and the teachers are all kind of truly scared by the level of other dancers from around the world, completely intimidated by it. And then suddenly something clicks and they go, but hang on, how can a young Korean, a young Cuban of 14 do that? What is different between them and me? Absolutely 100%. Nothing. Nothing. So why can I not do the same? And that's what happened. And I think that is why it is so important to continue doing it. And I mean that I don't like competitions, and yet I own a competition. But I understand the value of the competition. I know that there are some of the big schools in the world that say, oh, we don't like competitions, and yet they go and source dancers for their own schools from these competitions. There are big directors that, oh, I don't like competitions, and yet a lot of their dancers are winners at some of the best competitions in the world. So I think that there isn't ever a simple, basic answer to any question. And I always think that that is what I want to teach my son Alexander, is that you need to find the answer that works for you right now. Because the answer is going to change as well.
All the time.
But what is it that's going to make you happy in what it is that you are doing right now? And so, you know, we have it in psychologists or dentists. You don't just walk into a psychology office or consultation room. You've done your homework. You try to find out who you think will be good for you. And then you go and you go, oh, they are not doing what I was thinking they were doing. And you go to another one, you go to another one, another. And so the same happens in ballet. We change teachers, we change schools, we change companies, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If we think of sport, in rugby, today you play for the Sharks, tomorrow for the Bulls, the next one for a different team. And you go overseas, and our Springboks are playing for French teams, and sometimes the money is better, sometimes the conditions are better. And so that's what the competition circuit does for me, is that it teaches you that there are so many different options, so many different answers, so many different questions, because I think and I go back to my love for the Cuban school and the Cuban methodology. Because that was the first time where I saw some young dancers disagreeing or having quite heated discussions with the maestra. Pero, maestra, ¿por qué? No, not this, not that. Para. And then you understand that if you train the dancer really well, and they understand their body, not just the step, not just the syllabus, but they understand what it's about, then they are able to become the best person. Forget about the dancer. The best person they can be, because they can then start applying those same principles of dancing to their lives. And I think that's what I would like to see more of. And you've been in classes where I would get so frustrated with the youngsters, where I say, but you've just done this at the bar, now you go into the center, and I have to say the same thing. And now you go from the center to the allegro, and I have to say the same thing. And then you go from the allegro to your repertoire for the competition, and I have to say the same thing. Why can you not make that connection that the one leads and feeds into the other? But that's our job. Our job is to constantly remind and practice and skill up and ensure that we share those skills. You know, it's the one thing that I always say. I don't want you to have the key to this book. I want to give you the key to the box with all the keys.
Yes.
Because then I think that you like this book. But no. This book is so boring for you. But that camera or that plant is really what you want the key to. So if I can teach you access to the box with the keys, to all the keys, then I can.
And that's what I want to do with my student in Samsi Ballet school, like, because I think in my generation we were training like, okay, you do it, go to the competition or go to the company, and that's it. But they never sat with us and say, okay, how do you feel doing this step? Because for me it's different, for you it's different. So what we have is like, we train them and give the correction and whatever we say, but how it is in the methodology. But for that person, for example, Omi, he jumped, but he's taller. Sometimes it gets difficult for him to get higher, but I just ask him, tell me, how do you feel to do it? You know, because I can say, no, it's about sensation, you can jump like that, but it's you that is going to dance. It's not me.
Well, that's what I think we all are trying to strive towards for everything, is to have a thinking generation. And yet, sadly, yesterday there was a report that came out that talks about the unemployment in South Africa and the fact that a lot of the young kids that have had good university training and schooling are still unemployable. Not because they don't have a degree, but the degree doesn't actually allow them to be employed. And so that's what I would like for us to make parents understand and kids understand, that it's not about the paper.
Yes.
It's about the skill that you acquired in the process of gaining that paper. And that's what needs to happen on stage and off stage.
Yes.
I want you, and I often say to you guys, maybe I don't like the way you tell me that you don't agree with me, and maybe I will react out, but without fail, I will go away, and tomorrow or the day after, I will say, you know what, I actually thought about it and you were right. I don't like admitting that you were right, but you are right. Because I want you to be able to think what you want to think. But the other skill in that sentence or that whole example is that you need to be able to package your resistance or your questioning in a way that appeals to the person that stands in front of you, so that you don't get their backs up and you don't get them to react out. Again, I go back to the whole process of activism. Activism is indeed the need to get people's backs up. And sometimes there's a place for it, 100%. I'm in no way denying it. But sometimes there was this whole gay TV series called Schitt's Creek. And in one of the conversations, they were talking to the writers, and they were talking about the fact that they didn't want to make it an activistic production. What they wanted was to just show another alternative. How is life if a gay couple can just be in love and have a good business like a straight couple, like any other couple?
Yes.
Without saying, oh, you are bad for not allowing me to have that, or you are wonderful for create. No, just here is it. And it just really resonated with me that we need to understand that you need to package your discontent in a format that will read well to the person that you are wanting to achieve something with. So if I go to a funder, I need to know who they are. I need to have done my homework. But I cannot go with a completely preconceived concept of what I want to achieve. because that's not what the funder wants. The funder, whether it's a big corporation or a private funder, might feel that their area or field of focus for this particular time
is different for
is this.
Okay.
And so I need to then say, how do I package my ballet or my concept right here and right now in a way that will be acceptable to the funder? And that is probably why we do have a Mzansi, and we have a Gold Rhino, and we have the South African International Ballet Competition, because it is a skill that I have acquired over years. It doesn't come in a day that you necessarily have. Some people do have it. And I always say to people, I'm not natural at anything. I wasn't a natural dancer. I'm not a natural musician. I'm not a natural mathematician. I'm not natural at anything. So everything takes time. What I am natural about probably is my impatience, which is a terrible disease to have. But I am probably the most natural at bringing people together that have a certain skill set that in the end can make my dream become a reality. And I think that is, again, about the packaging. It's again about taking your history of experiences and stringing it together in a way that appeal to a much broader grouping of people. Yeah. So that's wonderful for me to be able to be in a place and a space where I can do that.
Nice. And another question is, like, I know you've been talking about the expo and the Gold Rhino, but I really want to ask you, what can we do to innovate and make more projects that involves everybody and the new generation? Because I always say the new generation because I want this podcast for the new generation. So they can sit and say, okay, he's doing that. So I'm going to try to work harder to get to that company or to that school for me to dance in that competition or ballet or project that you have.
Well, I think for me, the simple answer is there isn't a simple answer. There isn't a single answer. So when we took the ballet onto the How train, when we take the ballet into a shopping center, when we do the training teachers in the townships, when we create the Queen show, when we create the ABBA show, now that we are creating the Neil Diamond show, when we did when ballet meets jazz, all of those were puzzles in a bigger piece to say, I cannot speak to everybody at the same time. I think it was Bill Cosby that said he doesn't know what the secret to success is, but he knows the sure way to fail is to try and please everybody at the same time. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
I mean, just think of food. You cook food, and I'm a vegetarian. I'm the opposite. So let's do it. Yeah. We cook food, and I only want meat. I just told my
girlfriend that you don't eat meat.
So I eat only meat, and you eat only vegetables. So you have to give me meat. Otherwise, I'm not going to be happy. If you create a dish that mixes meat and vegetables, I'm not going to eat it.
Yeah.
And so it is understanding, again, always, your end user. Who is it that you are talking to? Who is it that you are wanting to talk to? And so that's why every interview I have with potential marketing and PR people and young people, you sat in rehearsals when we were talking about the Gold Rhino, and I kept on saying, so how do the conversation about the expo, when we had our own young junior company people sitting there, and I was saying, so how do we need to talk when we want to reach your friends? Because at the moment we are not.
We are not, yeah.
So what is it that we need to speak more Zulu, Sotho, Xhosa? Yes. But do we need to speak TikTok? Do we need to speak some of these other social media platforms that I don't know? So therefore, I employ you to come and speak that language because I can't. And so all of them, in the end, is achieving that. You are doing that in this podcast.
Yes.
So today you're speaking to me. So I speak for a certain generation, and hopefully I will inspire younger ones to say they would like to come and dance in Mzansi, either the junior company or be in our school or be in our normal company. But tomorrow you will speak to somebody else who speaks to a completely different grouping of people. And last week you spoke to Joshua. And that is achieving exactly that. And then putting it on a platform that goes worldwide is one of the ways. And that's something I want you to understand today. Even if you reach 10 million people on your podcast, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
And then I will definitely come back and have another conversation to help celebrate. But there are other podcasters that are also talking about ballet. And then it's the combination of all of those that will hopefully help catch and capture those different markets. So we might not always like Peter, Joe, Mary, Paul, whoever. We might not like what they are teaching or creating, but there are other people that will. And yet we want to make people believe that this is the only and the correct way. No. And I honestly feel that some of the directors of companies currently in the world and some of the directors of some of the biggest schools are some of the reasons why ballet isn't doing well in all of the places in the world.
And what do you think is that?
Because they have become so obsessed with the correct and only way. And they make their school and their company inaccessible to a younger and a newer generation, because that cannot be done. It should only be done this way. And surely there must be another way that you can achieve the same outcome. I mean, for years it's been all roads lead to Rome. And that same principle can be applied on dancing. Some kids work with hearing, some kids work with seeing, some kids work with experiencing. So that's why you sometimes have to say, do you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to say, do you see what I'm saying? And sometimes you have to say, do you understand? So neurolinguistic programming, that's what they are working on. And in the same way, saying stretch your leg to Michaela works. Saying stretch your way to Torizo doesn't. You have to do it differently. And then suddenly, Torizo can stretch her leg as well as Michaela or vice versa.
It's just the way how you say it.
Absolutely. And so I think that's the thing that all of us need to be able to understand, that we have to change up our own game to achieve a much broader outreach. So sometimes I have my own vision. Even from Mzansi, and I think that's a great conversation. I want to do this with Mzansi, but I have to listen to what Angela wants to do choreographically. I need to listen to you as a dancer and a teacher. I need to listen to Mahlatsi. So all of those things are different and difficult. And going back to politics, that's why politicians should be in a position for 5 years, maybe for a second term of another 5 years. After that, it needs to be the place of somebody else.
To change.
And I need to be able to go somewhere else. And that's why I'm fortunate with having the ability to go and adjudicate around the world and travel, is because I am hopefully bringing some ideas home and some people that will come and inspire us to do some of those things. But we have to allow change to happen. It's not easy. And the older you get, trust me, it becomes harder.
I mean, it's not that you say that, because like I was saying, I think I was talking to the company the other day, like sometime ballet change. And I remember one of my friends told me that I did another podcast. She said, do you think ballet is dying? I was like, what do you mean like ballet is dying? No, because now everything has changed. Everybody's doing a different type of ballet. For example, you can have Giselle with contemporary and neoclassical and hip hop, whatever. But they are not stick to the old ballet. I was like, no, but ballet never die. Ballet is going to be there. Well, it's going to change the story, but ballet is going to be there.
If you don't allow it to be dynamic, it will suffer. I mean, I always think of Latin. Latin is not a spoken language anymore, because the purists wanted you to speak it in one way and one way only. And so now it's only a written language. Afrikaans is a wonderful example that for many years we thought that the pure and proper way of speaking Afrikaans is the only way. No. The fact that we've allowed people in the Cape, people in the townships, people in different places to speak it the way that they want to speak it and the way that it's alive to them is the reason why Afrikaans is still a spoken language. And the same is applicable to ballet. Ballet of 100 years ago was very different to ballet from 200 years ago.
Yes.
And people surely then said, oh my gosh, it's going to die. You are destroying it. Your lines are not pure. And then 100 years later, it's different again. And 100 years later, it's going to be different again.
It's going to change.
Science is changing. Our training is changing. People are able to do more turns, jump higher, lift bigger. But at the same time, they are still wanting to move the audiences with their storytelling. And I think that's really, really what's important. And that's what will keep ballet alive. But ballet will also be alive because you speak ballet. I speak ballet. Michaela speaks ballet. Torizo speaks ballet. Offense speaks ballet. And in South Africa, more black people need to speak ballet. More black ballerinas need to be found. More black ballet storytellers need to be found.
Please. Yes.
And so that is what we are always trying to do. Again, is if you have, and you listening to this podcast and watching it, and you have a story that you would like us to tell, come and speak to us. Reach out to Monier and say, Monier, speak to Dirk. I want to do this. You know, that's what I love, is that even at this age, I was at an event in Zurich on the 27th of April, Nelson Mandela Day or Freedom Day. Not Nelson Mandela, Freedom Day. And I sat next to the sister of the king of the Zulus. And we then decided it would be amazing to be able to tell the love story of the king, the former king and mother of the current king, their beautiful love story, because it suddenly takes you into a whole different world of people that would go, why would you tell a Zulu story? Why would you tell a black story? Why would you tell a South African story? And that's what I want us to be able to do. We know more about European cars and European royalty, and we do nothing to really honor the South African stories, which brings us back to the gold reign of Mapungubwe.
Yes.
Because that is a story, and that is a people that played such an important role in the formation of the people of South Africa today, that it is so important to have captured that story. And we captured it in ballet. I'm not ever saying that ballet is the one and only way. No, I'm just saying it's one of the options that should be on the smorgasbord of options. Many options should be there, but one of them is, if you want to be able to do ballet, you can do ballet. And if you want to tell the story in ballet, then you can. And by telling that story in ballet, we have made it much more accessible to a whole new world out there, which is why the world is starting to say, oh, we want to have that story of Mapungubwe told here. And I think that's what we have to try and do. And that's how we will keep South Africa relevant, ballet in South African, black ballet in South African, and the South African stories relevant.
And this leads to another question. And how will you define the company style? Because I believe that you have mixed the African culture with ballet. The good example is Begingazi, which is choreographed by Adele. And so how do you define the company style? Like, they are classical, contemporary, we do...
Afro ballet is the word that I use.
That's good.
So that's the word that I like. And it's so funny that you bring up Adele, because it's one of the people I admire a lot in South Africa, and we share the same birthday, not the birth year. But when you speak to Adele, you realize that a lot of the things we are trying now, she's already tried 40 years ago. some things we weren't ready for, and some things we can learn, and some things it's good that it's been done then and we can repeat it now. But stylistically, there isn't, it's what I said earlier, there isn't a right or a wrong way. There is a need to find something that appeals to South Africa. So even when we think of the Cuban methodology, in 5 years, maybe 10, we are not going to look the same, even though we are following the same Cuban methodologies as the Cubans in Havana, or even people like Anarela Sanchez in Portugal, in Leiria. She teaches the Cuban methodology, but her kids are much more European in the way that they perform. But you can never deny that the basis is Cuban.
It's Cuban.
And so in the same way, I want us to, in the end, have something that is truly South African, based on the Cuban methodology. Because I do feel that if we look at the Royal Academy of Dance, they are still wanting to have the dancers look like British dancers. And that is maybe something that needs to be challenged in a way. Because we are in South Africa. We are in Africa. And I think that is what we need to find a space for. But in the same way, the incredible marketing achievement of the Royal Academy of Dance in South Africa is immense. Because there's not a family where there is ballet where they don't think they should have an RAD certificate, because that will be the key to a successful ballet and dance career. And that is just wonderful marketing. Do I agree with it? Not necessarily, I don't. Because when a dancer auditions for me or for any company in the world, they don't ask you, are you Cuban trained? Are you Russian trained? Are you RAD trained? Do you have a diploma? Did you pass with a distinction? No. When you walk in, can you turn out? Can you point your toes? Can you dance? Are you on the music? Those are the things that you need to be able to do. And I think that is what we need to understand as a dance fraternity, or people actually from the outside of the dance fraternity wanting to enter the dance fraternity, that you need to be able to dance in the end. And I think that is really, really important.
No, that's really good that you say that, because sometimes, like, I don't want to say we are struggling to get a new dancer, but we have the union company meeting, like I think we were doing Queen, and you ask about how can we get more people into the company, and some of them, they were saying that, well, I know about the Mzansi Ballet, but I'm scared to be in that company. And you were, but why you are scared? So that was the reason of no many dancers wants to come to the company. So what would you say to the dancer that wants to join the company or the school?
Well, I always think that you should come and try it out. Come and see if it's something that you like. Come and spend a few days with us. Speak to friends that have been there, that have tried it out. Because in the end, it is the creation of a beautiful family.
Yes.
A family that works, that helps, that calls, that carries, that feeds, and in the end perform together. And I always believe that the true value of dancing together is what will make South Africa an incredible country. And even with the ANC, they used to have a grouping called the Amandla Performing Group. And they used to go and perform around the world. And their leaders used to say that that group could achieve in 2 hours what their big leaders would take 15 to 20 years to achieve.
Oh, wow.
Because dancing together brings us together. Singing together brings us together. That is the message I am trying to achieve with the Gold Rhino, with Mzansi, with the school, with everything. With traveling the world, because that's what we do. We work together, we dance together, and we stick together. That's really the dream.
And let's talk about the Gold Rhino. How did the concept came to your mind, or how do you find about the Gold Rhino?
So for 30 odd years, I've been trying to find the ideal South African story that would read in South Africa and outside of South Africa. And I have a very dear friend, Samantha Severtson, that works at the Javits Museum. And she told me of the gold rhino of Mapungubwe, which I had never heard of before. And suddenly I said, this is it. This is the story. It's part of the school syllabus, and you have to really have something that will connect to the schools and the education system. And so then it was bringing together first choreographers, then musicians, then the designers, then the synopsis even more. Then we drove there. We spoke to professors. We spoke to storytellers. It was truly, I think, very close to a PhD thesis that we were putting together in creating this ballet. All the way through, trying to ensure that no such thing as cultural appropriation would take place. So we have this incredible lady called Tkolerwa Kashe Katye that would say, be aware, be careful. We worked with Professor Wally Soroti. We worked with Dr. John Carney. We worked with these incredible composers, an incredible team of composers. I mean, we had Mark Chain, that was our chief composer. But before he even came on board, we worked with Matthijs van Dijk, Dr. Kara Stacey, Mpo Modikeng. Mpo can play more than 100 African instruments. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing that you can take a piece of this, a piece of that, boom, and there you have an instrument, and it sounds amazing.
Amazing,
Then we worked with Wouter Kellerman, double Grammy Award-winning flautist in South Africa. And then we worked with Dr. Roel Khoza, who's one of South Africa's eminent businessmen, showing the incredible marriage of business and the arts, showing that if you are happy in what it is that you are doing, you can just achieve so much more. What he has done in writing books, editing books, poetry, helping with the compositions, being a very successful business person, being an incredibly nice person. That was fantastic. Working with David Klale as our costume designer. As you can hear, immediately my whole demeanor changes because I'm so passionate about it. But that's really what we are trying to achieve with this ballet. And then taking this ballet and this incredible South African story and putting it in a format that can read on any stage, whether it's in New York or Madrid or in Switzerland or in Soweto or in a shopping center. That is achieving something that is really special. And I think that is what takes me back to your very first question. Why do I keep on doing what I'm doing? That's why I keep on doing. When you sit in the audience and you see the impact of the show on the dancers, dancing together keeps us together, but on the audience and how they get so involved in it, whether they're white or black or young or old, whether they are straight or gay, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And I think that is so important to me. And finding in the next few years more stories such as that to be able to be told. Finding more young dancers that we can have in the production. I mean, being part of the Dance World Cup and finding Tsenolo to come and dance for us in our production, incredibly beautiful.
She was beautiful in the ballet.
She was incredible. She really had to go on a journey. I mean, I don't know if you can remember the first time you got to do a prince. You said, I was told I cannot be a prince.
You were the one that told me to.
And I said, no. Maybe in one way of looking at it, but you are not in that same environment.
Yes.
So here, you walked on stage and you became a prince. And Senolo walked on stage and became the princess in this African story. And she took what her incredible teachers, Sandra and Genevieve, and I can't remember the third teacher, had put into her. And she took that and put it into a language on stage that read so well. And I think that's something that is important for everybody, is that the technique is only the letters. It's the A and the B and the C. The dancing is writing the letter that says, "Dear Mom, I love you." "Dear audience, this is the story I'm trying to tell you. And I think that's important. And I think that so often young kids go to their ballet class, they get some semblance of a dance training, but they never become a dancer because they never got the skill or the experience of being on a stage and telling the story. And I think that's truly, truly important for us to be able to create the space and to, again, say, no, let's all work together with the junior company. That's exactly what we achieved. Many people said, oh, we can't work with them. We don't know what they are. But in the end, we were able to prove that we are able to work with different kids from different studios and to actually bring those studios on board to say, we want to learn from you. Not only you learn from us. And I think that's something that I think is so important, is that we like to believe that we are going to share our knowledge with somebody else. But we forget that learning happens in more than one way, that learning happens in both ways, and that we need to be able to go and learn from the other side as well. And I think that's the journey that in these last few years that I'm still alive and working with the company, I want people and us to understand that we have to go there and learn. While I'm taking the company to Switzerland in July next year, and we will go and share with them what we have, we will learn from them as well and bring some of that home in every aspect of our lives. That's really what I would like for us.
I think South Africa need to appreciate what you do for ballet, because you have done so much, and sometimes we just see the production, but we don't see what you do behind that. And I think for everybody it's easy to say, it's easy to make a production, let's see, but you are doing phone calls, emails, talking to people, trying to get people to ballet. And I think South Africa needs to feel grateful for that. And in my side, I'm grateful for having you in my life as well to help me with all this and to bring me back to South Africa, because I left and you believe in me and say, okay, come back again and let's work together. And I think I'm going to say thank you one more time. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. It's absolute pleasure, because it's a passion. But it is also recognizing different skills and understanding that partnerships are so important. Being part of the school, being part of the company, but it's not just a Dirk Badenhorst venture. It is not just a Mzansi Ballet venture. Mzansi means South Africa.
Yeah.
And it's bringing everybody into the thing, but that everybody starts feeling, I have a responsibility while I have a place, because with responsibility or with rights comes responsibilities. And I think that's so important, is that you have the right, you have earned the right to be able to say, I want to be part, I want to create, I want to pass on the knowledge that I have been so generously gifted over the last 20 odd years of your life. And that's why I say thank you to you, even to the Cuban school, to the Cuban people, to everybody that we've worked with. And what's so amazing is that sometimes this is the flavor of the month and then they are not. Politically, economically, whether there's a war on or there's not a war on, today we are friends with the good ones and tomorrow we are not.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to play that game or that and to navigate ourselves in that system. But it's necessary. It's necessary to be able to say thank you to everybody that makes this process the process that it is. A very dear friend whom you know, Anzi Hancock, always said, thank you and it costs us nothing. Just say thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, 100%. So the last question: what's the next upcoming production for MSAMC Ballet?
So we have a very, very busy year ahead. So right now we are working on the Neil Diamond show, which I think is going to be so special. Really, really. Just listening to the music, it speaks to this particular generation. Because as much as we are sometimes having to cater towards a newer generation, we also have to say, but who's currently paying our salaries? Who's currently buying the tickets? And so with the Neil Diamond show, that's what we are going to do. But we are also working with a friend and a colleague of yours in Spain, Jose, who will come and help us create a new Carmen, where we're going to bring together flamenco dancers from South Africa, pansula dancers from South Africa, ballet dancers from South Africa, a flamenco dancer from Spain, to tell the typical Carmen story, but just slightly differently, but still super entertaining, that it's going to be so beautiful. And then at the end of the year after that, we will be doing the ABBA show again, because it's just so popular, and it's such a great show to do over Christmas. So a lot of things happening, a lot of travel happening. And so we are very, very blessed, I think, in that very small group that we are, to be able to do as much as we do. And so it's an incredible journey to be on.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast, and I hope to see you soon again.
You'll see me tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. So thank you so much, guys, for watching another episode of Free Dance Podcast. Remember to subscribe, like, and follow in all our social networks. And yeah, hope to see you soon, and enjoy.